Hello, you are now tuned in to the Post Route. Here is your host, W. Earl Kitchings.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Post Route, the show where we dive deep into conversations with Black quarterbacks, both past and present. I'm your host, W. Earl Kitchings. This show is proudly brought to you by Quarterfi Back, the preeminent fraternity for Black quarterbacks and home of the prestigious BIP Memorial Trophy, the only award that honors both the top HBCU quarterback and the top black quarterback from high schools across the nation. Each week, we like to delve into some of our information and facts with our guests, and we are thrilled to have you with us tonight. So if you enjoy our content and want to support what we're doing here at the Post Route, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you never miss an episode. Join us live every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for more phenomenal conversations here on the Post Route. Well, tonight we've got a different show for you because we're going to bring you some information about Black college football that you may never have heard about, some individuals you may know about, a coach you may never have heard about, and a football program that was one of the best there ever was in HBCU football. But before we get to that, we've got to give you our watch list of our top performers as we get ready to get into the playoff part of the season. And as the 2024 football season is now on the other end of the season where we're heading into playoffs and championships. And before we know it, this season will be a wrap as far as high schools and colleges goes. But we want to start off with our rankings and our watch list for the HBCU BIP Memorial Trophy watch list in week 9, October 28th. At number 10 from Fort Valley State out of the SIAC, Kelvin Durham, 1,583 yards and 18 touchdowns. Those doggone Wildcats of Fort Valley State are in the hunt for the SIAC championship, and he's helping direct them there. At number 9 from Virginia State of the CIAA, Romello Williams, 1,667 yards, 15 touchdowns. He's a junior. Out of West Virginia State, Isaiah Best, a junior, 1,695 yards and 14 touchdowns. Moving down to number 7 this week, from Tennessee State out of the OVC and Big South Conference, Draylon Ellis, now in with 1,772 yards and 13 touchdowns. Not too far above him, at number 6, from South Carolina State, another graduate football player, Eric Phoenix, 1,791 yards and 14 touchdowns. At number 5, Mekhi Higgins, a redshirt junior from Arkansas Pine Bluff out of the SWAC, 1,909 yards and 15 touchdowns. At number 4, Torrance Bardell Jr., who's a junior, out of Langston University, out of the Sooner Athletic Conference, 1,946 yards and 16 touchdowns. Coming in at number 3 out of the CIAA, and man, let me tell you, the Bulls of Johnson C. Smith have shaken up the CIAA this year because they are in the hunt for a championship, and they haven't been in the hunt for a championship in a very long time. Darius Ocean, a junior, coming in with 1,965 yards and 15 touchdowns. Going back into the SIAC at number 2 from Albany State, Isaiah Knowles, a redshirt sophomore, 2,114 yards and 26 touchdowns. And the man that has been on top for 7+ weeks. That's right, David Wright, a junior at Clark Atlanta, 2,443 yards and 23 touchdowns. Man, this thing is getting down to the last couple of games, and it's going to be about who performs the best to be the 2024 BIP Memorial Trophy from HBCU. So those are our top 10 guys, and it's going to be a fight to the end. As you can see, It's not much separating these guys from the top to the bottom. When we talk about the high schools, when we talk about the young men that are doing their thing at the high school level, man, do we have a list for you. When we talk about our top 10 guys from that list, at number 10, because it is starting to separate. So we're going to do the top 10 tonight. I know we normally do top 15, but we're going to abbreviate it just for tonight. At number 10, Bryson Riggins, a junior out of Russell County, Alabama. He's at number 10 with 2,328 yards and 32 touchdowns. At number 9, DeAndre Golston, a senior out of Leesville Road in Raleigh, North Carolina, 2,375 yards and 30 touchdowns. At number 8, Bryce Baker from East Forsyth in Kernersville, North Carolina. He's at 2,392 yards and 28 touchdowns. So you can see 8, 9, and 10 are separated by about 60 yards. At number 7, Keelan Russell, a senior out of Duncanville, Texas, 2,486 yards, 34 touchdowns. At number 6, Antorius Johnson out of Calera, Alabama, 2,554 yards and 16 TDs. Coming in at number 5 is Jackson Bird, a senior out of Cleveland High School in Clayton, North Carolina, 2,579 yards and 28 touchdowns. At number 4, Antoine Hill Jr. He's a senior out of Houston County in Warner Robins, Georgia, 2,656 yards, 33 touchdowns. At number 3, that guy who threw for 817 yards a couple of weeks ago from Shreveport, Louisiana, Mr. Peyton Houston out of Evangel Christian Academy, 3,140 yards and 28 touchdowns. At number 2, from Havelock High in Havelock, North Carolina, a senior, Jalen Hewitt, 3,174 yards and 31 touchdowns. But the man everybody is chasing, and I think he is pretty much putting this rankings to bed. It looks like he is going to be the odds-on favorite to win our BIP Memorial Trophy for high schoolers this year. He's out of Jacksonville, Florida, out of Zarephath Academy, Jordan Durham, a senior, 4,769 yards and 50 touchdowns. That basically rivals what last year's winner did. And you know who that was, the one, the only, the man down there at Florida, you know. So we're talking about a new guy coming in this year where DJ Lagway threw for about the same amount of yardage last year, 4,800 plus yards last year. Jordan Durham is right on his heels, right at 47, 69, and 50 touchdowns. DJ threw for 52 last year. So those are our top 10 high school guys for black quarterbacks at the high school level in week 10 on October 28th. So that's where they are. You now know who they are. Go to our Instagram page and get a look at their images, their pictures, and to see their rankings. If you don't catch them tonight, you can always go there to catch our Instagram rankings as we do for both the HBCU and for the high schoolers. Now, tonight, going to bring you something very, very special, simply because tonight is a very special night, because I know we talk about quarterbacks, and that's what our mission is. But sometimes you got to change things up. And because we wanted to change up tonight's show, we want to talk about one of the great black college football programs that is known to a few and probably not known to many. Out of the eastern shore of the state of Maryland, back in the 40s, the mid to late 40s, the early 50s, through the 60s and 70s, but through the late 40s and 50s, they had a phenomenal football program. Now, Maryland State, which is now known as the University of Maryland Eastern Shore, they no longer play football. They have all the other sports, but they stopped playing football in 1979. There are several other colleges that once upon a time, back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, had football. They don't have it anymore. Some colleges had football, dropped it, brought it back. Edward Waters University had it, dropped it, brought it back. Allen University had it, dropped it, brought it back. Benedict had it, dropped it, brought it back. But the schools that no longer have football in their programs, Bishop College, Philander Smith, Jarvis College, Texas College, Wiley College, these are some of the programs that back in the early years of black college football, 30s, 40s, they were competitive and they really had some outstanding programs. And again, our team, our program that we're recognizing tonight is that program from the state of Maryland. And the reason why I'm bringing the Maryland State College Hawks football program, because it needs to be duly noted who they were, who the great coach was that led them during this time, and four, I'm sorry, five of their players went on to play in the NFL. Three of them have won Super Bowls. They're Super Bowl champions. One of them was the first black head coach in the NFL in the modern era. And the other two gentlemen were outstanding players, played for Super Bowl teams, or they played before they had the Super Bowl. You just had the NFL championship. All five of these gentlemen are champions because they played on championship teams. Some more noted than others. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about Maryland State College and the football program that they had. Because unless you know about this program, unless you went to Maryland Eastern Shore, unless you played at Maryland State when they were Maryland State College, this is probably getting ready to be an eye opener for you. Now, the original name of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore at its very outset was Princess Anne College, because they are located in Princess Anne, Maryland, and that is on the eastern shore of the state of Maryland. Now, they had also been known as Maryland's Agricultural and Mechanical College for Negroes, but Dr. J.T. Williams had the school renamed in 1948, and they played their first football season as Maryland State College. And during that time, they had an enrollment of about 1,500 students. And the coach at that time was a guy by the name of Vernon Skip McSwain. Vernon Skip McSwain. And Coach McSwain was a phenomenal coach. During his time of coaching at Maryland State, and he coached from 1947 to 1951, he compiled a 121-5 record. 121-5 record. And Coach McLean, I'm sorry, I want to make sure I get it. Coach McLean, I'm sorry, it's Vernon McLean, taking these program at Maryland State and not just beating some of the top known HBCUs, because they played everyone, and they beat the Gramblings, they beat the Southerns, the Delaware States, the Howards. They beat teams that you would be like, I would have never thought that they would have beat those type of teams, but they did. They beat Eddie Robinson and Grambling. They did. Now, in 1948 through 1950, they had one of the most phenomenal running backs to ever play college football for black colleges. Out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he arrived on the shores of Maryland Eastern Shore. And when it was all said and done, when he had finished his time at Maryland State, he became a two-time All-American. Two-time All-American. His name, and he's got a great nickname because he was a very shifty and speedy running back, and his name was Sylvester Swifty Polk. He helped put that program on the map. You know, you got to be some kind of athlete to make All-American, not once, but twice. And during the years where he played for Coach McLean, they did some phenomenal things. Like I said, they had some seasons where they lost one game or no games. And like I said, they beat Grambling, and they beat Grambling decisively. So he built this program in the late 40s, early 50s. Coach Vernon Skip McLean is in the National College Football Hall of Fame as a coach because of what he had done at Maryland State and the teams he had produced in those years when he had a guy like a Swifty Polk. So I want you to know that everything is not just between the schools you know about down in the southeastern or the southwestern part of this country, in the SWAC or the SIAC. When you started moving up toward North Carolina, Virginia, but then when you start moving up towards Maryland and the DC area, Maryland State played in the CIAA, and they had some phenomenal teams, as I've already stated. But they also had some phenomenal players that came along after a Swifty Pope, and they went on to have great careers in the NFL. So, in addition to Coach McLean playing teams where they had very great records, Maryland State during his time played 6 predominantly white colleges during his time. And the phenomenal thing about Coach uh, Coach McLean was the fact that he was able to bring these teams and play them and beat them. Glasgow State, Trenton State out of New Jersey, Wilkes College out of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, Brooklyn College out of Brooklyn, New York. They played white colleges back in the 40s. They played them. It's documented. It's documented. And Coach McLean was the guy that led the Hawks to these phenomenal seasons. Now, as you can see on your screen, that's a picture of Coach Vernon Skip McLean, National Football Foundation Hall of Fame member, 100 victories, 21 losses, and 5 ties. This next guy, that is, I know it's not a great picture, but if you just look at that picture, you can see that, man, that guy must have been special because that is Sylvester Swifty Polk, the guy who was probably one of the greatest football players in the history of Maryland State football. Two-time All-American running back from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Now, if he's not in the in the Black College Football Hall of Fame, he deserves to be, because it was not easy playing back in those days. And as you can see, without a face mask and playing against, HBCUs, but then you played against these predominantly white colleges, and you just beat them pretty easily. Some of the scores 42 to nothing, 19 to nothing. They just handled them with ease back in those days. And our hats go off to Coach McLean for leading this team the way he did, because he set the standard, he set the bar, and some other coaches came after them, but none of them had the success that he had in these times. So when you hear about other programs having success back in the 40s and 50s, let it be known that Maryland State College was a team to be reckoned with. If you check out the records at Grambling and other black colleges, you'll find out back in those days that Maryland State was a force to be reckoned with. So Swifty Polk, Vernon Skip McLean, two of the great all-time athletic personalities at Maryland State, now the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. But let me just take you one step further. Let me give you the names of the players who are known for winning championships in the NFL both before and after the Super Bowl. Because before the two leagues merged, before the AFL merged and the NFL merged to make it one National Football League, there was an American Football League and a National Football League. And a lot of black players from black colleges got opportunities to play football in the AFL. So you had some guys who went to that league and did a great job. The first guy I want to bring to our attention played with Joe Namath and those 1969 New York Jets that upset the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl III by the score of 16-7. Running back from Maryland State College, i.e. University of Maryland Eastern Shore, the great Emerson Boozer. Emerson Boozer played for the Jets from 1966 to 1975, and he was on that magnificent team that won that Super Bowl. Another guy, and he's more known for who he played with as opposed to winning a championship. Once upon a time, the most feared defensive line in the National Football League was called the Fearsome Foursome. The Fearsome Foursome. They played for the Los Angeles Rams. Deacon Jones, Merlin Olsen, Roosevelt Greer, and this gentleman from Maryland State College, Roger Brown. Defensive tackle, played for about 4 years with the Rams and became a part of that fearsome foursome defensive line that gained a lot of acclaim and fame because they were just not the defensive line you wanted to play on Sundays. They were mean, they were aggressive, they were physical, and they shut it down often. The fearsome foursome. You had them. You had another great defensive line called the Purple People Eaters that were from the Minnesota Vikings. Of course, you had the Steel Curtain that was for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So you had those three named defensive lines that made their name because of the type of defense they played. And they were just relentless. Roger Brown, Maryland State College. The next guy was an offensive tackle, and he played from 1958 to 1967. He was a two-time champion with the Baltimore Colts when they won the NFL championship in 1958 and 59. Went on to play with the San Diego Chargers and the New York Jets. His name, Sherman Plunkett, offensive tackle, two-time champion with the Baltimore Colts. The next guy, probably the most outward speaking guy that you would ever want to meet who played football back in the late 50s and 60s was a guy by the name of Johnny Sample. From 1958 through 1968, he played in the NFL and the AFL. He started with the Baltimore Colts, was on that same team with his teammate Sherman Plunkett, went on to play with the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Washington Redskins, and also played on that 1969 Super Bowl team with his teammate Emerson Boozer and Joe Namath. Johnny Sample played defensive back for the Jets, and that was the last year he played professional football. And finally, the one guy that probably stands atop his other alumni from Maryland State College, Art Shell. Offensive tackle with the Raiders. At the time he got to the Raiders, they were the Oakland Raiders. Here are his credentials: 3-time Super Bowl champion, 8-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All Pro, the NFL's first black head coach of the modern era for the Los Angeles Raiders from 1983 to 1989, the United Press International Coach of the Year in 1990 as the Raiders went 12-4 in just his second season. Art Shell, one of the great offensive linemen in pro football, one of the great offensive linemen in HBCU football, just an all-around great guy and a superhuman being. But those are the 5 guys who came out of the program that no longer exist, but they had some history, they had some good teams, and they had some outstanding players. And again, we're talking about Maryland State College, i.e., Maryland Eastern Shore. And to just know that these gentlemen and this coach did the great job that they did, phenomenal. Phenomenal. You got to know your history when you're talking about black college football. We know about the Florida A&Ms, the Tennessee States, the Grambling, the Southerns. We know about them. But tonight I wanted to share with you about Maryland State College and Coach Skip McLean and the phenomenal job he did to be the foundation for setting a program in motion as he did when he coached there. Once again, in a very short amount of time, he won 100 football games. He only coached for about 7 years and won 100 football games while only losing 21. So I wanted to bring that to you tonight because I thought this was important. We've got other programs, other quarterbacks we're going to talk about. And we're going to, every then and now, we're going to sprinkle our post-route shows with something like this to give you some history, about some of the black college football programs that no longer exist, and their history and legacies are out of sight and out of mind. However, as the preeminent fraternity for black quarterbacks, and because our mission is to preserve the legacies of black quarterbacks, we wanted to make sure that we brought you this snapshot of some great football history about a program that did some phenomenal things in the state of Maryland, so that you would know. I gave you 5 guys, all NFL champions. I gave you the first black head coach of modern day era who was from Maryland State. So they have a lot to be proud of. Uh, Doubt if they'll ever get back to bringing football to their program, but you never know. They may not. But tonight, this is what we wanted to do here on the Post Route, was to bring you this information about Maryland State College. Now, before we close our show tonight, we want to remind you that you can now order your quarterfied back t-shirt. It's only $30. You can go on Zelle at 904-994-2189 and get this shirt and become a proud supporter of Quarterfied Back, the preeminent fraternity for black quarterbacks. You can tell people the stories that you've heard. You can tell people the things and comments you've heard from some of our quarterbacks. If you want to do more, let me tell you what else you can do. You can also become a teammate of Quarterfied Back. $44, you'll get a different type of Quarterfied Back t-shirt, the one with the Greek letters on it, Q5B, Quarterfied Back. You get your decal that you see on the screen, and you'll get your official Quarterfied Back teammate certificate saying that you are a proud member of our organization. And if that's the $44 is not in your budget, maybe $44.40 is, and that will help you become a supporting member of the Quarterfied Back. You'll get your decal and your certificate. All these things are important because as we continue to build what we know to be something very, very special in American football by talking about black quarterbacks and their legacies, we want you to know that you can join us and help us by becoming a supporter at $4.40, a teammate at $44, or you can order your Quarterfied Back t-shirt. Now, once you do this, I guarantee you'll have a sense of pride about knowing who these black quarterbacks are and what they're doing. Not only are we honoring quarterbacks from the past, but we're honoring those from the present. We're honoring quarterbacks who play now at the high school level. And let me tell you, coming up in December, we're looking to have two outstanding middle school quarterbacks on our show. One young man won the city championship and the state championship within 4 days of each other. He played in two major football games and won a championship for his city at the middle school level and turned around in 4 days and won a championship at the state level. And we're going to have him on our show in December, along with one other young man who's a phenomenal talent. So we're not just recognizing guys who play football at the college level or the high school level. We're looking for outstanding black quarterbacks who are talented at the middle school, high school, and collegiate level. Wherever we find them, that's where we're going to take our show. That's where we're going to take our interviews. That's where we're going to take our notoriety about these young men. And we want them to know that there is a special place for what they've done and accomplished so that their legacies, so that they can pass the baton on about this organization and the legacy that is leaving to others who will come behind them. We are Quarterfied Back, the preeminent fraternity for black quarterbacks. So until next week, and once again, you can get your membership and your t-shirts just by going to Zelle at 904-994-2189. Just so you know, we are about to release a brand new Quarterfied Back t-shirt that you're going to love. I guarantee you, if you love this one, you're going to love this next one even more. We're working on our merchandise and trying to get it ramped up and ready for you. So again, subscribe to us, like us on YouTube, find us on Like Us, and like us on Facebook, X, and LinkedIn. Quarterfied Back on Instagram at quarter_5_back. We would like to thank you for watching, and please share our link with your friends. Let me just say this show is not possible without the help of my fine team, Mr. Will Relaford, our chief photographer, my social media director, Mr. Kemal Lazir, and my number one, my ace wing person, that lady that can make this show happen every week, my producer and director, Miss Ronleen Kennedy. I would like to thank Mr. Corey Denson for our logo design. Special shout out to Mr. Ira Lockhart down there in Tampa, Florida, for helping us find some of these quarterbacks that we've been putting on the show. We do appreciate you, Ira. Keep up the good work. Amen. And keep finding us some other guys that we can talk about. So until next Monday night at 7 o'clock, right here on YouTube or whatever social media platform you find us, as we always say, go deep and go for the bomb. I'm W. Earl Kitchings. Till next Monday, have a great week. Take care.